Have you ever seen a man get everything and lose it all? Not just money, not just power, but peace. Let me tell you a story about Emeka Okike, a man who learned that the price of greed is heavier than gold. It all began the day his father, Chief Nana Okike, died. The mansion in Auka was quiet, almost too quiet. Inside, mourners whispered prayers, but the air between Emeka and his younger brother Nonso was colder than the rain that had begun to fall outside. Emeka, the elder, stood tall in a black suit, calm and composed. Nonso looked smaller, hands trembling, clothes wrinkled, eyes darting everywhere, as if the walls were watching. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. Years of rivalry had built a wall between them, silent but strong, and now it felt heavier than the coffin in the middle of the room. When the lawyer read the will, everyone expected tension, but the words themselves seemed fair. The house, the mansion, was to be shared equally. Nonso exhaled in relief. At last, some justice. But Emeka's eyes, they didn't rest. A flicker of something sharp, dangerous, passed across them. Weeks went by. The brothers tried to settle into this new arrangement. At first, it worked. Emeka managed the household and investments, claiming it was his responsibility as the first son. Nonso believed him. He trusted his older brother just a little. But slowly the cracks began to show. One morning, Nonso arrived at the mansion to find the gates locked. God stood silently, eyes full of pity. "Oga, make you know, enter again," one murmured. Nonso laughed weakly, thinking it was a joke. But when his clothes were tossed out in a plastic bag and the gate slammed behind him, he understood. His own brother had taken the mansion from him. Inside, Emeka signed the final transfer papers. The printer hissed like a snake, each page a bite into their family bond. Ownership officially transferred. And in that moment, something invisible shifted in the air. Emeka's life looked perfect on the surface. Big cars, business deals, weekend trips. People envied him. But inside, peace became a stranger. It began with small things. Doors creaked at night. Footsteps echoed in empty hallways. Sometimes he heard a voice, soft, cold. "Emeka, why?" He woke sweating, heart pounding. Wife beside him confused. He laughed it off at first, but the laughter didn't last. Business deals started to crumble. Investors pulled out. Contracts failed. Clients vanished. At home, his children fell sick. Doctors found nothing. His wife began having nightmares, seeing Chief Nana standing by the mansion gate, shaking his head slowly, disappointment written in his eyes. The whisper came every night, growing louder. "Return what is not yours." Emeka tried everything. He visited churches, prophets, spiritual leaders. He prayed, sprinkled salt, burned incense, shouted, begged, wept. Nothing worked. The voice grew louder, insistent, relentless. One night, thunder split the sky and rain poured like punishment. Emeka drove to Nonso's apartment in Newi. His car skidded to a stop. He stepped out, soaked to the bone, shivering. Nonso opened the door and froze. His brother looked broken, pale, hollow-eyed, trembling. "Brother," Emeka whispered, voice shaking, "I can't sleep. I can't breathe. I hear Daddy's voice every night. Please, take it back. I'll return the papers." Nonso's anger melted instantly. He placed a hand on Emeka's shoulder. "You've carried the curse long enough," he said softly. "Let's fix this together." For the first time in years, the brothers embraced. Rain soaked their clothes. Regret soaked their hearts. The next morning, they drove back to the mansion. It felt heavier, colder, as if the walls themselves remembered every bitter word and every silent resentment. Birds circled above, quiet witnesses to their return. Inside, Emeka laid the keys and documents on the table. He whispered a prayer, asking for forgiveness. Nonso stood beside him, relief on his face. Maybe now, he said, Daddy can rest. That night, Emeka slept, truly slept. No whispers, no footsteps, just silence. The mansion felt lighter, as though it had exhaled all its anger. But at dawn, his phone rang. Half asleep, he answered. Nonso, he's gone. He didn't wake up. Emeka's heart sank. Not shock, not fear, but understanding. The curse, the greed, the mistakes, they could not be undone. He understood at last. Some inheritances are not blessings, they are blood debts. Emeka sat frozen, the phone slipping from his hands. The words repeated in his head like a drum. Nonso, he's gone. He didn't wake up. The house felt suddenly colder, the walls closer. He stared at the floor, unable to move, unable to breathe. His heart pounded, but it wasn't just grief. There was something heavier, a weight pressing down on his chest, the kind of guilt that seeps into your bones. Every memory of the way he had treated his brother, the locked gates, the signed papers, flashed like lightning in his mind. His mother arrived shortly after. She had aged, of course, but now her eyes held a fear that Emeka had never seen. She looked at him as if he had become a stranger, a man who had taken more than just a house, a man who had carried a shadow into the family. Emeka, she whispered, voice trembling, What? What has happened to you? He could not answer. Words had lost their meaning. His mother's hand trembled as she reached for him, and he recoiled slightly, almost without thinking. It was not intentional. It was the weight of what had been done. Relatives began to visit, some out of sympathy, some out of fear. They stayed on the edge of rooms, eyes darting, conversations quiet. Every gesture seemed cautious, as if any wrong word might awaken something he could not control. Even the servants moved slower, careful not to meet his gaze. The mansion, once full of life, now felt like a house of ghosts. Not just because of the whispers of footsteps, but because the living feared the man who had been its master. Word spread through the village quickly. At first, curiosity, then unease. People whispered behind hands, crossing streets to avoid his size. Mothers held children back, saying, Stay away from that place. The man, he carries something terrible now. Even those who had known him since he was a boy sensed the change. A darkness that had nothing to do with grief alone, a presence that demanded caution. Emeka walked through the mansion, feeling each step echo like a warning. Mirrors reflected not just his face, but the shadow of guilt, a mark he could not erase. Even the walls seemed to lean closer, heavy with expectation, accusation, and sorrow. He tried to pray, to cleanse himself, but the prayers felt weak, all low against the reality of his actions. He realized then that his inheritance was more than a house or land. It was a cause of greed, a lesson written in the suffering of his brother and the fear he now inspired. Peace would not come through wealth or property. It had been taken from him the moment he chose ownership over compassion, control over family. And as night fell, Emeka understood a final truth. The world could not forgive what he had done. Not yet. His mother's weary eyes, the cautious relatives, the fearful villagers, they were all a reflection of the shadow he had become. Only by living humbly, by restoring what he could, and carrying the memory of Nonso with respect and regret, could he begin to lift it. The mansion remained grand and polished, but to Emeka, it was a reminder of isolation, guilt, and the price of ambition without heart. Even now, if someone passes quietly by the gate, they might hear not just whispers, but the heavy footsteps of a man who learned that inheritance without conscience is a debt the soul must carry alone. Neighbors said at night you could hear footsteps pacing through the halls, sometimes a man's voice whispering in regret, and if you pass the gate quietly, you might hear it too. When a man steals from blood, even the earth keeps record. The story of Emeka Okeke teaches something simple but powerful. Greed may give you everything you want, but it can take what matters most: peace, family, and the weight of your soul.